Okay, so I'm gonna put up my reflection for my curricular design, backwards design unit from last trimester. I'm sorry, semester. I teach trimesters. And so this is my reflection on how that went. I want to be kind of upfront that we have not finished this unit. It got postponed a lot, mostly because trimester 2 and trimester 3 changed over. And I didn't really want to start a book in one trimester and then try to shift it over to another. And also, my students have a bilingual seal test they're taking right now. We had spring break and stuff that we're at weird times. So we're not very far into the book, but I do feel like there's still a lot that I can reflect on how this went so far. So the highlights for this unit of study are, I would say, really these desired results, enduring understandings, essential questions, knowledge, and skills. So what I did when I first introduced this unit is I showed students this presentation and I asked them some questions in a Schoology assignment because I really wanted them to know why we were doing what we were doing. It wasn't just for no reason. So I asked them to just read through and find something in the whole thing that they could connect with as like a learning goal, something that actually interests them in terms of why we're doing this. Backwards design also really does force you to realize to connect your concepts, enduring understandings, EQs, knowledge, and skills with your assessments. And I definitely noticed that I would say it would come up kind of in multiple parts of this reflection, like what changes would I make or will make as I finish out this unit this trimester of the school year. I would better connect my assessments, I guess, to these core concepts of this unit. And especially my thinking has shifted a lot in respect to that because I originally started out, when we look at like my actual curricular design template, I originally started out with the idea of doing something called a smash doodle. It says it's a formative, it technically counts as a summative in our stuff, but a smash doodle is just where each chapter of the book, students do like they do some work, I guess you could say, to summarize it. Probably should just open the other one, but this was for a different book that I ended up not doing. But they'll do things like illustrate the chapter with like a collage of images, new words that they learned from the chapter, a summary of the chapter in Spanish, and then 1 to 2 quotes of the chapter that maybe support that summary. And when I eventually kind of realized after like 2 chapters or so of doing the smash doodle that my students were not connecting with it and that they weren't really completing it at a high completion rate, which, again, I'm trying to lean into the idea of that being an indicator of compliance and engagement issues instead of just, I don't know, something else that could potentially be causing this problem, just laziness. I think a lot of times we tend to just blame the students. So I decided to kind of relook at my goals, and I realized that it doesn't really connect with any of my goals. There's kind of a general theme throughout this, which is the choices we make now and those effects that those have, or how they shape us in our future. And then making reader and text connections and being like a proficient reader, and then looking at the purpose and message of the author and of the book. And summarizing doesn't do any of that. We could use evidence from the text to support these ideas, but summarizing just doesn't do that. So at this point, I've actually scrapped the smash doodle entirely. Smash doodles are better for kind of, did you read it? And then maybe using for, being able to see the overall story. But the amount of work that goes into doing just like one chapter of a smash doodle is more than like is really necessary for these chapters, especially for their ability level. So I felt like it would be better to shift our focus towards these. So let's see here. Which one I'm most proud of? The first one. So what was I most proud of in this unit was probably my chapter 3. So in chapter 3, I decided to change things up and have my students do collaborative work. That has always been pretty good with engagement. I don't want to have to waste too much time talking about this, so maybe I will also link somewhere in however I submit this. My vlog post about this for 4.6, I think, that kind of goes deeper into the collaborative work that went into this chapter 3 unit. But really, there was specific learning I got out of doing intense collaborative work. And it was really helpful to use resources to like guide me in making the collaborative work. So I did things like make it heavily structured. So each person in the group had a job. The groups were predetermined. They would choose their jobs and then write out what their jobs were. They would read what their jobs were supposed to be doing. And then it just seemed like they were, and I guess to reflect on how that went, it seemed like they really were doing a better job at holding each other accountable and being more focused and engaged. I mean, I can definitely still show the picture that kind of goes along with it that shows how engaged students really were from this. It seemed like it was something that was very, engaging for them. So let's see here. I would say that was probably the biggest shift that I had, was moving towards like, how do I actually use these skills or essential questions and enduring understandings? So in this discussion, they were supposed to talk about 4 main questions that they had already written the response to on this piece of paper here about what was happening in that moment. So basically the main character, or the narrator, finds a baby in the woods after his sister tells him to go to the woods. He finds that odd and obviously assumes that she knew the baby was there and tried to make him go to the woods to find the baby, because she kind of just was like, please go to the woods. And he was like, why? And she said, I just really need you to go to the woods. Take your bike and go out there right now. So the questions are, what would you do with the baby in that moment? So we paused partway through chapter 3 and had them respond to these questions. It was right when he found the baby in the woods. And he asks himself a question, basically, like, what am I supposed to do with this? So what would you do with that baby in that moment? What plan would you make to help the baby? You just find it literally in like the cold on the ground. What answer would you prepare for the questions that you're going to encounter? And I feel like this connects so much better with my like first essential enduring understanding of what the choices we make now and the effects that they have on us later. And so what they did with these questions, I should maybe go through the last one. Do you think it's better to tell the truth, like about your sister telling you to go to the woods, if you were the narrator, Cameron, or not, and why? So first they responded on their own to this, and then they had this group discussion that I was talking about that was heavily structured. So like, here are my directions for it. And I also upped the ante by saying they could only speak in Spanish, and we even played a game where they could like steal each other's clothespins. I gave them clothespins, and they could steal each other's clothespins if they spoke in English. And they had to come to a general consensus on like these 4 questions of a plan, really, which is really what these questions are about. What plan would you do? The best part was when we got to the whole class discussion. It was probably the most engaged I've ever seen them in a whole class discussion. Usually we have a lot of issues with students talking with their neighbors and stuff while we're doing these discussions. But that was not the case this time. And we got to ask a few questions, and I got to ask the class questions, like, do you think that this group's plan is a good idea? Why or why not? Feel free to also add when I say, all right, let's open it up to the class. Does this make sense to do? And it was a really cool experiment and made a lot more sense for my connection, again, to some of these ideas. We've also talked about the second one about being a better reader, which would go a little bit with those smash doodles, and kind of how we started out was with the smash doodles. But really, the smash doodles, again, summarizing is not really making reader to text connections as much as what I already talked about, comparing yourself to them. What would you do? And then we haven't really talked a lot about the last one yet, about like the meaning, but we are starting to talk more about, the themes, I think, of this book, you could say. So other things I would change for next time, I would also, I think, like to start it out with that ideology in mind, probably reformat the first 2 chapters in the way that I've built them so far. I am really, as we find out eventually, it is his sister's baby. They're in high school, and she like hid her pregnancy basically from the family. What I have not finished in this book, I haven't finished the last 2 chapters. I don't know if he decides to tell the police the truth, but in the beginning, he does lie for his sister and just says he went out to the woods because he just wanted to go on a bike ride. So I think I can bring that back around better, and I also want to make sure that I'm mixing up the ways that I'm doing collaborative work, but I will say that I think it was very helpful to do collaborative work with us. Oh man, the feedback and coaching that really helped me most with making this was definitely, too many tabs, was definitely Vanessa, in our meeting, oh my gosh, way back when we were doing like the, what's it called? The One of the things that we've done, man, my brain is fried. So she gave me a lot of help on how to view this more as like an English language arts experience instead of like a foreign language Spanish experience. This book for my students, my heritage students, this is like probably like an 8th grade, 7th grade level book. Whereas my foreign language class, like my Spanish 3 class, they have to read like 5th grade or 4th grade level books because that's where they are proficient in their proficiency. And I realized that like my students, my heritage students would be really bored with the same types of things that we do in our foreign language version. So I leaned into Vanessa for that and asked her some about ELA and kind of what goes along with that. And that is how I really did, I believe at one point, I really did completely reshape my enduring understandings and essential questions, because the original way I had it, it just didn't really, like I said, make any sense with what my actual goals should be with something like this. I know this video is probably getting pretty long, but yeah, so even if we look at like these back in, I'm trying to find where I changed it over, because there was one book we were originally going to do it with, and we ended up changing books. I did a book walk because I just didn't think they'd like the one that was presented. Well, maybe I did get it right away. But even my old one, I guess, when I just was doing it with the original book, they didn't really have to do with parts of being a reader, like being a better learner. It was pretty much all emotional or social emotional connections, as you can read here. So I'm kind of glad that I decided to take like a 3-way approach, thanks again to Vanessa, of like a SEL part to this, right? Sorry, let me go back. An SEL part to this, a like ELA standard of text, reader text connections, and then I guess still an ELA standard of like purpose, intent, themes, message within text. So, and then brain-based learning. Yeah, brain-based learning. So for me in here, I even kind of opened my old, if I can find it in here, my old writing on brain-based learning that I did in like tandem with this unit during our program. And I would say that especially the when I started to change things and do things like discussions and stuff like that, it was a very different experience, and I do think that was a huge way of teaching to different learning styles. Because again, I was noticing that the way I was running it with just summarizing the text and not having any meaningful or like personally connected experiences with the text didn't make sense with what I was trying to measure and what we wanted to do. So I decided to change up what we were learning about, but also the way that they were learning, like I said, with collaborative work. I, again, also gave students many written directions and tried to be a little bit more structured, including jobs and brain breaks. I will say this, while I've done less brain breaks, I am better at like using the time that we have in more versatile ways, or like especially in terms of different learning styles, like kinesthetic work, artistic work, just listening, and then visual discussion. Using those different ways kind of gives the brain a bit more of a break, because it isn't just listening to the teacher talk for an hour, or just reading a chapter on your own for an hour, or just writing for like an hour. So yeah, that's kind of how this went, and I'm excited to finish it out. The rest of the school years, this entire rest of this time is just going to be this book. Yeah, it's just been crazier than I thought it would be, but I do think that I am getting a lot better at this, like I've said already many times in here, connecting my core needs for what I want out of the unit with the assessments and the way that we are doing assignments and activities within the unit. And I feel like that's something that I really have always had a kind of a big disconnect with. So thanks for watching my probably way too long video, and hopefully, yeah, I'm done with this like 3-month-old project. Also, if you're wondering why I'm on the ground, I threw out my back like a month ago and have been dealing with that, but we're almost there. Woo!